everybody. Welcome to this special bonus episode of the Northern Spin podcast. I'm Michael Taylor. As ever, I'm joined by Chris Maguire, but in an extra special bonus edition, we've got Naomi Timperley. Now, Chris, you're a tech journalist. You know Naomi quite well. How would you describe our esteemed guest today?
Well, Naomi can talk for herself, and she really can talk for herself. But if I was to describe her, I would say that everybody knows Naomi. She's like the Kevin Bacon of the tech sector in the North. You're only ever 6 stages away from somebody who knows Naomi. And I'd also say, and Naomi, correct me if I'm wrong, you're quite outspoken, aren't you? If you think something, you say it. Would that be fair?
Yes, definitely.
Right, so I've got a particular vote of thanks for you, Naomi, because when Chris asked me to do this podcast, I was in two minds about doing it. I was quite busy at the time, and some people said, don't do it. You were one of the people who said, no, you should. You bring something to it. Your contrast will actually work really well. And I have to say thank you, because I think you were right.
Well, she's patting me on the back for that. Thanks very much for that, Naomi.
I thought you were outspoken. You haven't said anything yet.
I haven't. Well, hello. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I'm very, very excited to be here.
Now, listen, I was triggered to invite you onto our podcast, Naomi, because it's 1 year since the horrendous invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin's Russia. And a lot of us, you know, we wanted to show solidarity with the people of Ukraine. We wanted to do something, and you did. So you took in a Ukrainian family into your home, and I was just intrigued as to how that's gone for you. I saw your LinkedIn post about it. I thought, well, let's get you on the podcast to talk for yourself about the experience of taking a family in and what that's been like and how they're doing now.
It's been incredible, actually. It wasn't an easy process. So we signed up for the Homes for Ukraine scheme, but then didn't realise that actually you then have to sign up for another website, for which there was many, where you advertise that you have a spare room. And we put an advert on, and straight away, I think the first person that got in touch with me was Lilia, who's the daughter who's living with us with her mum. At the time, they were living in Italy, so this was in May of last year. And they eventually came to us on the 28th of September. So we have Lilia and Natasha. Lilia's 23. She did a degree in international business with Chinese. And her mum, Natasha, is 43. They've both celebrated birthdays with us and Christmas. And, we were very lucky that we had the space in our house to do it. I remember picking them up from the airport in the afternoon of the 28th, came home, had a quick brew, and we went to the local Ukraine meetup. So I wanted them to sort of meet other people. I met some other host families as well, and then came home, and we've got some dear friends who are Ukrainian, and they've been over here for about 20 years. So they were made to feel very, very welcome. We've got the space to be able to do it, and they're both working. And, to be honest, they don't want to be here. They want to be home in the Ukraine. We've seen tears, we've seen laughter, and we've tried to welcome them as much. And we said to them, first thing we said to them when they came is, we want you to feel like this is your home. And I'm trying not to cry now, actually, because at Christmas they actually said that we feel like this is our home.
Yeah. Well, it's an incredible act of generosity that you've done, and it's dependent on people like you reaching out to do this. I think it's absolutely amazing. So fair play to you for doing that, Naomi. How do they stay in touch with people back home? And are they getting like harrowing news from the front and stuff like that?
So they speak to family all the time. My husband was saying to me a couple of months ago, Natasha was on on FaceTime with her cousin who is fighting. And, she was talking to him. He's like, full on army gear, gun, hat, everything. And, waving at Max. Yeah. And it's so weird because it's like, it's happening. Their family are from a part of Ukraine, and where their homes are is near the Russian border, but they have other family near the Hungarian border. So when they left Italy, before they came to us, they went back to that part. But they didn't feel safe being there, and the daughter has got trauma from it.
Yeah.
But they, we've heard stories about family and friends being tortured.
Yeah.
It's very real, but then also on the other side of the coin, you know, the cousin, he's got very basic equipment. So they bought him a new helmet. They bought him night goggles. So it's very, very real.
Can I ask a question, Naomi? Because you mentioned how difficult it was. I do some work with an amazing guy called Steve Morgan, the founder of Red Row, for a very well-known philanthropist. He runs the Steve Morgan Foundation. I'm not talking out of turn when I say that he was absolutely horrified by what was happening a year or so ago in Ukraine, and he tried to bring about to fly over 1,000 Ukrainian. Doesn't use the term refugees. Doesn't like the term refugees, but he was willing to pay to put him in accommodation, etc., etc. And it's fair to say it was very, very difficult bureaucratically. He found it very, very difficult as well. So the terms of you bringing these two people into your home, originally it was to be for a 6-month placement, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And there was all this stuff about, do you get paid? Not that you do it for reasons of getting paid, but clearly there was a cost to you. And then there were stories about at the end of the 6-month period, what happens? Because obviously if you've committed your home to 6 months, you don't want to be in a position where you're the person who says, we don't want you in our house anymore. Yeah. How do you deal with that? And can you talk about the practical basis of bringing them into your home?
Yeah. So we had to, we had a spare bedroom. We've got, spare other rooms in the house. So they have like their own lounge, and we bought them a telly, and, we wanted to make it as comfortable as possible. But yeah, practicalities wise, you get a payment of £350 a month for up to 12 months from the council. Trafford Council have been incredible, I will say. So, very, very quickly, they were able to get the necessary paperwork so they could go and work, which they are both working. It was... they had, like, Natasha, the mum, doesn't speak any English at all. She's learning English, and I've never seen anyone so determined. She's got, like, Post-it notes everywhere. She's learning English. The daughter speaks perfect English. But Trafford Council made them feel incredibly welcome. We get people coming over and checking. I feel very protective of them. As does my husband. But yeah, it hasn't been easy, but I will say that when we first signed up for it, we thought it would be 6 months. I think that very first Ukrainian meetup, when I met some of the host families, and they said, it would be more likely that it would be a year. And actually, I think a year is a much more reasonable amount of time. We've had the conversations with them, and they know after a year that they will look for an affordable home. Again, Trafford Council have been very supportive about options that might be available to them. But we always know, and we've made them know and had those honest conversations. So, I know that they will be with us for a year, and I'm quite happy for that.
Yeah. It's unbelievable situation. And again, I can only say I'm in absolute awe of your commitment to making people's lives better. My wife Rachel is involved in works for a charity, and we've got a program, refugee support, to support refugees who've started their own businesses. And one of the real misconceptions that we had to conquer on that when we were running the program, and I was a volunteer and mentored someone from Yemen, we have this perception that these are people who've kind of crawled out of a cave that's been bombed, and that they're destitute and they can't do anything. My mentee Hanan, her father had been the transport minister of Yemen. These are people with huge capabilities who are absolutely determined to make a good life for themselves. They don't want, you made a really good point at the beginning, they don't want to be here.
No.
They want to be back home making their life in their home countly. With the bonds that they've got. We've just got to make it as comfortable as possible for them in that time.
No, absolutely. It's like, Lilia has got this amazing degree. When she came over here, I said, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to be a barista. That's what I was doing when I left university. Before the war started, I want to make coffee. I love coffee. And, I said, well, you've got this amazing degree. And she said, no. She said, I mentally... I can't cope with anything else. Yeah. The mum has a degree in engineering, and
does she make you nice coffee at home?
She just got one of those cafetières. We have got a coffee machine, but it's broken. Max can fix it. But they make lots of things. But she wanted to work as a barista, so I remember, she was struggling to get something. She'd seen advertisements and she'd applied for a couple of things and wasn't getting anywhere. So I put something on LinkedIn, and lots of people tagged in things. And David Pryor, a guy who works for Prolific North, his local coffee shop, LD24 in Altrincham, were looking for a barista. And she's now working there.
Brilliant.
The mum has always sort of done cleaning and nannying. She got pregnant when she was quite young after doing a degree in engineering, but was a single mum. She probably would have been an amazing engineer. She's incredibly bright, but again, she just wanted something that would be not easy. She's cleaning 20 rooms a week at the Premier in Old Trafford.
Wow.
20 rooms a day. So it's not easy, but they both work, and they contribute to the household, as in they make things, they make food, and they are part of our family. And it's funny actually, because I work for myself, so sometimes I'm working in the evenings and different times of the day. And Max almost has like this other family that he eats with now, which is great. It means I don't have to cook all the time. But I would say they have enriched our lives, and I've learnt loads. So I remember Lilia coming, and she had lovely nails, and she said about my daughter's nails. She said, "Oh, how much does it cost to get your nails done over here?" And I said, "It's about 30 quid." And she saw in the Ukraine it was £7, which is very cheap to us, but actually. Subsequently, it turns out that the national average wage is about £250 a month. So £7 is actually quite a lot of money.
Yeah. So I tell you, Naomi, they're amazing insights into what you've done for that family who've come to stay with you from Ukraine. So thanks for that. But while we've got you, there's lots more that we can talk about in the world of Naomi Timperley. So tell us a bit about what's been going on. You've been at a round table this morning about International Women's Day, which actually isn't till next week, but you're just kicking things off. You do some amazing things, by the way, to get women involved in the tech sector here in Manchester and further afield. So tell us about that.
So I wear a couple of different hats. I'm helping and supporting businesses to grow. So I do that with We Are GSI, which I run with Vikas Shah. So we work with lots of different businesses around growth strategy, whether they want to come up with new products or services. I'm like design sprint trained. So I love that early sort of idea concept, getting people into new markets, that type of thing. And then on the other side, I've designed and developed and delivered several entrepreneurship programs. So both very different, but going back to sort of digital skills and women in tech, through Tech North Advocates, I've been really lucky to be able to have been given a platform. So massively, supportive of women coming into the tech sector, because we've still got very, very low numbers. And I think that starts from schools, going through to, not everybody goes down the path of university, but I think it's important that people are highlighting that actually there is a place for women in the tech sector. Well,
if there's going to be a tech industrial revolution in this country, it's an opportunity that should be open to everybody.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I highlight especially when I go to schools, is actually the first thing I do is talk about digital touch points in everyday life. You go to the supermarket now and there's technology, the way you bank. And young people don't realise that they can be part of that journey and be part of developing and designing technology of the future. And I think when you talk about it like that, you get people excited, especially young girls.
Fantastic. So, Chris, I was also wanting to ask Naomi about your appearance on Dragon's Den, unless you've got something else.
There's a couple of things. Well, I think if we talk about 2008 first, you appeared on Dragon's Den with your business, Baby Loves Disco. I actually looked at some videos over the weekend as well, and it's basically babies like drinking milk, and instead of having a disco at 3:00 in the morning, you have it at 3:00 in the afternoon. It does what it says on the tin, Baby Loves Disco. You actually got offered some investment from Deborah Meaden, but turned it down, but stayed in touch with her. So just cast it back. What's it like being there? on Dragon's Den facing the dragons, where Deborah Meaden goes like that for the purpose of the tape. I'm now tapping my fingers on the table. How nerve-wracking is that?
Oh, it's terrifying. But I'll wind back. So go back to 2007 when I first came across Baby Loves Disco. It was an American events company in 27 cities across America. And I hadn't been to a disco since I'd had kids. It's a disco, a nightclub. And
Dance around your own way.
and I saw it and I was like, wow, this sounds amazing. And I just emailed them out of the blue. And then that was in the January of 2007. Fast forward to September 2007, we launched in London and Manchester. We'd already had a 2-page spread in the Saturday Times knowledge supplement. So I'd gone from being like a stay-at-home mum, which I took time out to spend with my kids, which I was incredibly lucky to do, to then the next year being, contacted several times by the BBC saying, we think that you should do Dragon's Den. And I did it with my American business partner. And it was when they filmed it at Pinewood Studios. So it was very exciting going down to London. Oh, not Pinewood, but outside. They were filming a film called Wolfman at the time with Anthony Hopkins. There's lots of people dressed up as wolves. And yeah, it was absolutely terrifying. Everyone that we were pitching with was supposed to pitch the week before, but one of the dragons was taken ill. So we assumed that we would be the last people to pitch. They recorded us going up the fake stairs. And then we went into the green room, plastered with a load of makeup to make myself look half decent. And then I remember me and my American business partner would only practice the pitch the night before because he'd only literally flown in from Philadelphia. We'd had a quick pint of Guinness at the hotel bar, trying to guess who else was pitching at Dragons the next day. And so I remember this producer sitting with us, production assistant, who looked very concerned that he thought we were going to completely flop it. We were the second people to pitch. So you never see the people that have pitched previous, and went in and got offered £100,000 by Deborah.
So who was out? Did someone say I'm out?
Yeah, they all said out.
Except Deborah Meaden.
Except for Deborah Meaden,
Who were the others?
It was James Caan.
Peter Jones would have been on. Peter Jones, he would have been on.
Peter Jones, Theo Pathetis, who was lovely. The Scottish one. I'm not even going to say his name because he wasn't very nice. But it's a TV show, so But we were in there,
isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and we were in there. I think it was an hour and 45 minutes. And obviously they
reduced that down to about 3.
Yeah.
I can ask you. I want to talk about Stephen Bartlett, who's now a dragon. But do you think programs like Dragon's Den and The Apprentice, do you think they're good or bad for business?
Good question.
I can't watch Dragon's Den anymore. And I know lots of people that have been on The Apprentice. I think The Apprentice is a joke. I think it's actually, it makes me cringe every time I watch it now because they, especially the women, they get them to wear the suits and the matching dresses and high heels. I don't know any women that wear those outfits. Yeah. But just going back to Dragon's Den, I remember speaking to somebody who was going on it a year later, and that person had practiced their pitch about 100 times. And to get the adrenaline rush, had run up and down the corridor of their workplace. So put themselves under enormous pressure. And yes, there have been some fantastic successes, but there's also been things like Tangle Teaser. They didn't get investment, and it's like a worldwide company. So it is, again, as long as you sort of know that if you're going to do it, it might be you're doing it for a bit of PR, but they will edit it. I spoke to a guy who was on it a couple of weeks ago, and he was really disappointed about how he was edited. And I said, what did you expect? It is it's an entertainment TV show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing I blame The Apprentice for more than anything is young people going around with their phones, holding them like this and speaking into them on speakers. I blame The Apprentice for that. Unless The Apprentice is just being really zeitgeisty and doing what the kids do. But I never saw it until they started doing it on The Apprentice.
Yeah, it's really
rubbish, isn't it?
It's really irritating.
But I think the point you make as well about the way it portrays women in business as well, and they come up with phrases like, and men do as well, I'll walk over anybody to get what I want in life. And actually, you can be nice and successful in business and in life in general.
Yeah.
And what The Apprentice does, lesser so Dragon's Den, but all these reality TV programs. It's the reason why I've said I'm not going to go on Love Island, Naomi.
I'm really disappointed.
I know, because I am just not going to sell my integrity to the highest bidder. But what it does is it creates the impression that you've got to have a six-pack to be popular to other people. Yeah. You've got to, look great. You've got to have a full set of hair. You've got to be all these things. I don't like it. Stephen Bartlett. Okay, so Stephen Bartlett is one of the new dragons. He's been on, I think, for about a year, 18 months. Been in the news quite a lot recently, actually. So just if you haven't listened to last week's podcast, we mentioned him. He sold his business with Don McGregor social chain. He sold it, I think he exited 2019. He may have left in 2020. The business has recently been sold again for a headline figure of 7.7 million, albeit there's a potential earnout depending on performance of about another 9.5 million. That brings it up to about 16.5 million. There's somebody that we both know, an entrepreneur called Timothy Amu, well-known entrepreneur, nice guy. He went public and he basically said, well, hang on a minute. He sold his business, he said, for $600 million US. That's what he describes himself as on Dragon's Den. And yet this story said he sold his business for 7.7 million pounds.
So he's successful, but not as successful as he claims to be. And that's the basis of the critical coverage that Steve Bartlett's received in the Times that has said he's not the tycoon he claims to be. My question, I guess, to you, Naomi, sorry to interrupt, Chris, if that's the direction you were going in, is that a problem?
Yeah, it is a problem. Smoke and mirrors. I think, he should be incredibly proud that he, going back to what you said, the figures, £16 million, a sale of a business, I think is an incredible achievement. But saying to publicly to people that you have sold a £600 million business is a completely different story.
Actually, in fairness, I think it's $600 million. He always said dollar, didn't he? Right. But whatever he said.
Yeah, it's $600 million, pounds. Yeah. I think it's a misconception. I think it's people have bought into that. Obviously, it's been incredibly successful for him because it's allowed him to, do incredible things.
Dragon's Den.
Yeah, Dragon's Den, and you know what? I think it's great to have a young man on Dragon's Den. I think it's fantastic. But just going back to this £600 million or dollars. It's not true. And I think, it's really interesting. I saw when this conversations first came out that actually very, very quickly, Dom changed his Twitter bio.
Don McGregor, co-founder.
Don McGregor, yeah. I'm sure Stephen did. But I don't follow him anymore. Sorry. Yeah. And I think people think that they have to build something, but let's not forget that actually he's very cleverly built his personal brand over the last couple of years. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But people have bought into that $600 million.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So I've done loads of stories over the years about business people who fake it till they make it. Where I think it's dangerous is people then think you can cut corners, that it's easy, that they go for the lifestyle with the Range Rover Evoque and the trendy office with the beanbags and the strip floors and all the rest of it. Whereas actually the reality of starting a tech business and running it, and it's tough, isn't it? You know it yourself. You live and breathe it with the sort of people you meet day to day.
It's incredibly tough. I saw a great video actually on Twitter yesterday. It was an old steam train, and it was just basically saying this is like life as a startup. And there was in the steam train was going quite slow, and there was a train wooden thing, I can't remember what they're called, in the way. So the guy had to run off the train, remove it, and then quickly jump on the train. And then he saw another one and he had to hit the other one off with this other bit. And that's what life is like. Yeah. And I think, yes, you're right. I think people think, oh yeah, we need a big fancy office and a big fish tank and a bean and a bean bags and slides. That doesn't mean that you're a good business person. And actually it isn't easy. It's incredibly difficult. I've worked with lots and lots of very early stage founders who read through that smoke and mirrors, and they think it's going to be easy, and it's not. Yeah. It really isn't.
So just to bounce it back to me and Chris, then we're journalists. I've recently got back in the game, having had a period outside of journalism. Do you think we've got a responsibility as journalists not to fall for the hype and actually to be a bit more skeptical and write stories about businesses that aren't what they claim to be?
Can I just come in there as well? Because that was a question I was going to ask.
going to answer my
No,
question.
I was going to, because Timothy Amu basically said, he wrote, journalists lapped it up because the truth is,
I get a free pass because I wasn't around.
Yeah, if you say something enough times, people will believe it. And in last week's podcast, Northern Spin, which actually massive supporter of, Michael called me to task and basically said that people like you, if you like, believe what you're told, and as a consequence, you create this myth. I've always said Stephen Bartlett is successful. He is successful.
He is,
but
absolutely.
Is he as successful as he may be portrayed? Probably not. Stephen Bartlett, if you want to come on this show and give us your side of the story, you are more than welcome.
What's he successful at, Chris? That's the point. I think you made the point last week. Self-publicity.
Yeah,
that's the main thing, isn't it?
Can I get a word in edgeways? I'm just going to answer really quickly.
I did ask Naomi the question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just really quickly, right? I think, yes, journalists have a responsibility. It's all about doing due diligence. But I also know, and you mentioned this last week, Chris, is actually the amount of stories and the press releases that you get. Do you have time to do that due diligence? I think if people are making really bold claims, I think you have to. But it would take literally a couple of minutes to go onto Companies House and actually, you can go onto other websites that are available to see how many. I knew this stuff years ago because I do due diligence. And it's not rocket science, but I appreciate that not all journalists have the time to do that. You can't check out every single person.
Yeah, it was falling for the hype though, isn't it?
Yeah,
because there's some absolute wrong-uns trying to manipulate journalists in order to put themselves in positions of responsibility. Yeah. And it's our responsibility then to call that out. Yeah,
and it's that brand. It's because you if you've heard it more times and people keep saying, "Oh, that person's amazing, amazing, amazing." You kind of you want to believe it, but I do think, and I've called this out before. I've done several roundtables, and a lot of people are too scared to say it.
The Emperor's not wearing any clothes.
No, yeah, but there's one particular. I think it was Whitecap Consulting. I did actually talk about this, and I don't like it. I don't like that smoke and mirrors. I think people need to be their authentic selves and not try and be something that they're not. And do you know what? Yes, you've got the whole thing about fake it before you make it. And Steve is an incredible entrepreneur. He is successful. He doesn't need to say that he had a $600 million pounds.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He didn't need to do that.
But what it does, you see, is that it creates the impression that if you're successful, you've got to tell the world that you're more successful. And that's what I don't like, because that's what social media does. You talk about authenticity as well. So a lot of footballers have got managed accounts. And they'll do this thing about that was for the fans, kiss the badge, etc., etc. But actually, that's not them. That's an agency that they use. We talk about people like, say, Stephen Bartlett. It's very prolific on social media as well. And there is that question of, okay, how authentic is that account? And that's a concern that I've got. Can I just say as well, the one thing me and Michael won't do is we'll never exaggerate how important we are. But we were number 8 in Belgium last week. Yeah, I thought you'd be impressed by that. Number 10 in Bahrain and number 24 in the UK. We're going to be big in Ukraine next week on the back of this podcast as well.
As Chris said with one of his acceptable dad jokes, it puts a new angle on Belgian waffle. Yeah. Anyway, so Naomi, I want to ask you about Tech Nation. So you can probably explain a little bit more of the back detail because I'm not as up to it as obviously you are. So Tech Nation is an organisation, government-sponsored, to provide support and help and advice for businesses. They had an office in the Bonded Warehouse in Manchester, is that right? Yeah. And they had their support cut and the contract's been handed over to Barclays Eagle Labs. Why is this an issue?
I think there's a couple of things. So am I comfortable about a bank having it? Not really. But I do recognise that Barclays Eagle Labs have done some incredible work with entrepreneurs. I think they've supported, I'm sure I saw a figure, it's either 4,500 or 9,000 entrepreneurs. I know people that work at Barclays Labs, Eagle Labs. I'm not saying that they don't do stuff, they do. Should they be given a government contract? It leaves a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth. I get why they were given it. So if you sort of read why, the reasons why, there was a press release that went out last week. So they are offering what they say is more value for money. They're not charging for their staff's time. So that's like, I think Tech Nation's company accounts last year said £6.5 million after pension contributions, et cetera, was on salaries. Tech Nation did some incredible programs. I think I remember my fondest memories were when it was Tech North. So Tech North were very much truly supportive of the North. So, very, they were Newcastle, Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, and you would see them in those cities, and they were very, active in supporting entrepreneurs. And then obviously it was then sort of squished into Tech Nation. Was it the same? I'm not sure it was, but they have supported a huge amount of entrepreneurs. Are they responsible for the unicorns that we have? Again, if we go back to smoke and mirrors, a little bit, but not completely. They're not the complete reason as to why we've got, organisations like, say, the Hut Group, for example, and other unicorns. But I do believe that they have built a community. I'm a big fan of Mo Aladu, who's worked specifically in the Northwest, Kane Fulton in Leeds. I'm absolutely devastated for them. I've seen the hard work that Elizabeth Scott's put into it. I'm sad that they couldn't try and keep it going. Yes, I think they would have had to make some big staff cuts, but I do think that they could have had the existing programs. And actually, I think there's a value. I know they started charging for some of them. I think there is a price that actually they could have kept on with it. So yeah, in a long-winded way, I feel slightly uncomfortable about it.
No, in a very thorough and perceptive way, I think.
Okay.
If I can correct you on that, that's excellent. Thank you. So my mate Dave reckons, right? So my mate Dave Parkin, former founder of the Business Desk, where I work now, he wrote his piece last week, say he's very sceptical about the role of city councils in supporting businesses. He thinks they should just get out of the way. I'm probably paraphrasing unfairly, but that the serious businesses, like the ones that you referred to, AO.com and THG, they won't have been founded as a result of signing up to a council programs that things like the Growth Company in Manchester will support, that actually the only businesses that go to them are grant chasers. That is an opinion, and that is a perception of people who are starting businesses, that actually, if you're serious about it, you're not the sort of person that would go to one of these government-backed or council-backed programs. Well, is that unfair?
I think it is a little bit unfair. So, if we go back to Tech Nation, that was a government-funded support program, and there are loads of different government-funded support programs. You've got things like Help to Grow, which is run through universities, which was, brought up by Bayes, which is now called something else. You've got the growth program. If we're talking about actual councils, as in physical councils and people from the council, I would say the one that it highlights to me the most is Leeds City Council.
Right.
So,
which is actually the one Dave was talking about. So
Leeds City Council, actually, from what I've seen, I sit on the board of Women in Leeds Digital. And Eve, who's in charge of
Eve Roothouse,
is incredible. She's not just a voice. She actually goes to things. She's a big part of what's happening in the Leeds Digital Festival. She's very supportive of Wild, but she isn't just, she's not just far, she's very much in touch with what's going on in the city. And actually, is that happening in Manchester? Probably not as much. Right. I'd like to, but Manchester's slightly bigger. And obviously we've got Greater Manchester Combined Authority. So I think it's a little bit unfair of Dave.
Right. I'll get a message to Dave to tell him. So, Chris, we've got Naomi for a few more minutes. This has been a great conversation. Really enjoyed it. A bit different from what we normally talk about.
Yeah, and Naomi,
about politics, maybe.
You're being far too modest, but what number did you come in at on the Computer Weekly Women in Tech list?
Well, last year I was fourth, but the year before I was third.
I know.
And do you know what? It's something that I'm incredibly proud of, because I worked in tech recruitment in the late 90s, and I used to read Computer Weekly when it was like a physical magazine. So it's something that I'm super proud of. I don't care. And I'm not, it's great to get recognition for something, but something that really matters.
Yeah. And just to give you some huge credit as well, because you're much too modest, is that you're a mentor to a lot of people, both overtly and, behind the scenes where people contact you and ask for your help. I mean, obviously, MT over there asked if I was worth working with, and you agreed that I was. And now we are international global superstars in Belgium and Bahrain. I'm passionate about the North, and I'm not from the North. I'm an adopted Northerner. I think from your accent, you're a Southerner as well, flying the flag up here, doing missionary work as well. But we're both joined by a common bond of wanting the best for the North as well. Yeah. Do you sit here now and do you have confidence moving forward that the North is going to fulfill its potential? Or do you worry that it's getting a thin end of the wedge?
We're still getting a thin end of the wedge. But I love the fact that we are not afraid to shout. I think we need to shout a little bit louder. But yeah, I've been up in the North longer than I was a Southerner. I did live in Kent for a little bit. Yeah.
Don't mention Kent, because Michael always cracks his other joke when you mention Kent. Yeah.
Yeah. But
exactly.
No, I think we do get, there's still, the levelling up. I don't think it's ever going to get as much attention as the South or London. But then I suppose the question I would ask, if you look at any capital city and then different parts of the country, so if you looked at America, for example, would you say that everyone gets an equal piece of the pie there? I think, we are the second city. I know that Liverpool and Birmingham say that as well, but Leeds apparently.
Do you know what I think the second city is?
Go on.
London.
Yeah. Do you know what? Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm with that.
Apparently it's a real manc attitude.
That's good. But I think, I'm looking at a quote on the wall, actually. Manchester's got everything except a beach. But actually there is a beach in Urmston, It's like by the River Mersey, but there is a beach in Manchester. But just going back to your point, I think what I've seen in the last couple of years is more northern voices. And I love the fact that actually we aren't afraid to say that we're not being treated fairly, because we aren't. So, there's still lots of problems with the transport system. There's still lots of problems with the fact that actually it's more difficult for us to get investment. And don't even get me started about how difficult it is to get investment as a woman. That's a different conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. Naomi, thank you so much for sharing your insights, not only on taking in a Ukrainian family, for your role in advocating for women in tech in the North, for advocating for tech businesses, but also for the North more generally, and sharing your insights about what it's like to go on Dragon's Den. Chris.
Thanks very much for coming in. Absolutely. I've got huge respect for you as well. Do need to thank our sponsors, Oscar Technology and Lily Shippen, and also the company behind this podcast. We couldn't do it without the fantastic friends at What Media as well. Yeah, absolutely. And if we do become number one in Ukraine, it'll be thanks to you. But I admire you hugely. There was a statistic I read at the weekend that 40% of the UK have actually supported Ukraine in one way or another, mostly giving money. There aren't many people who actually open their doors up and take people in. I haven't. And I look at you in thinking, actually, I'm not sure I could do that. Thankfully, there are people out there like you. So thank you very much. Can you give us a Ukrainian word for goodbye? Have you learned any Ukrainian words, no swear words?
Do you know what? That's really bad. I can't remember. I know I used to work in Bulgaria for a bit, so I used to speak a bit of Bulgarian, but good night is lekanosh, I think.
So is that in Bulgarian?
Yeah, that's in Bulgarian.
So we're now going to be big in Bulgaria. Talking
Bulgarian.
Bulgarian.
I'll tell you what we will say. The two words that I know is Slava Ukraini.
Dobro večer.